Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode as I take you back to 19th century in the UK. Edmund Kesteven was born in 1855 as the third of 6 children in the Kesteven family, which included his father, Edwin, and his mother, Dorothy Sales. They lived in Sutton in Ashfield, Nottinghamshire, where they worked as framework knitters. This job involved using a special knitting frame to make stockings and other delicate items. It was often a tough and uncomfortable job. Although they worked at home instead of in a factory, the costs of living were high, so everyone in the household had to contribute to earn enough money to survive. The Kesteven family was also passionate about cricket, a sport that was very popular in Sutton in Ashfield. Many famous cricketers came from their town during this time, including test players like Johnny Briggs, Fred Morley, Billy Barnes, and Wilfred Flowers, who grew up there. Other notable players included county players Jack Crossland and Tom Wass, as well as umpire Frank Farrens. Edmund had a cousin named John Kesteven, who was Edwin's nephew. John played 3 first-class matches for Nottinghamshire in 1876, scoring a total of 24 runs in 4 innings. He continued to play cricket professionally until the late 1880s, mainly working as a coach at various schools. However, after his wife passed away, he moved back in with his widowed mother and returned to framework knitting. As for Edwin's cricket career, we have limited information from a pseudo-obituary written in 1895. It mentions that he began working as the assistant professional at Hampstead Cricket Club in 1879. His professional cricket career lasted until 1891, but he never reached significant fame. Although we don't know exactly how much money he made, he seemed to be living comfortably without financial troubles. This might have been because he continued to live with his parents and likely did framework knitting while he wasn't playing cricket. In 1880, Edmund was employed in Cockermouth, described in the obituary as a professional to a private gentleman. This likely meant he worked for someone who managed a private cricket team or served as a coach. The obituary stated that he stayed there for 5 or 6 seasons. But this might not be accurate. His cricket career can be traced through newspapers, though it gets confusing because of the overlapping careers with his cousin John. However, we can reasonably conclude that in 1881, Edmund was a professional at Church Cricket Club, which existed before the Lancashire League was formed. The club's website lists J.T. Parnham as the main professional that year, but at least one local newspaper mentions Kesteven as a second professional. Additionally, Cricket Archive shows a few scorecards for Church in 1881 that include someone named Kesteven, with 2 scorecards listing him as E. Kesteven. At some point in the early 1880s, definitely before 1883, Edmund Kesteven spent at least a year as a professional cricketer in Leeds. His obituary mentions that he played for Holbeck Cricket Club. However, a report in the Yorkshire Post from June 13th, 1882, states that a player named Kesteven was actually with Hunslet in Leeds that same year. This could mean that the obituary was mistaken about the club name, or perhaps Edmund played for both teams during different seasons. According to the obituary, his time at Holbeck was cut short because he suffered a blow to the head with a cricket ball, which might have been more serious than people realised at the time. After leaving Holbeck, Kesteven took a position as the professional at Queen Elizabeth Grammar School in Mansfield. One source even claims he scored a century, or 100 runs, for the school team. The obituary then becomes unclear, stating that after his time in Mansfield, he had an odd season at home, before finishing his cricket career in Nottinghamshire. It also mentions that after 2 seasons at the grammar school, Kesteven returned to Hampstead and then went to Reading to work as the professional for the Reading Town Club. Unfortunately, it's difficult to confirm these details. While it's challenging to create a clear picture of his career, it seems that Kesteven was successful enough to have a professional cricket career lasting at least 11 years, even though details about his performances are scarce. On the few scorecards that mention him, he appears to have been an all-rounder, meaning he both bowled regularly, though we don't know his bowling style, and batted in the middle or opening order. Although he was never famous, he was likely a well-known name in several areas across the country. Some people who knew him described him as being somewhat boastful about his cricket achievements at the time. But there were a few hints that all was not well. In 1883, Kesteven's brother-in-law, Arthur Bristol, who was married to Kesteven's sister, Ada, travelled back to Sutton in Ashfield with Kesteven, who had been playing in a cricket match that Bristol had attended. When they arrived home, Kesteven seemed very strange and told Bristol that he was afraid of being arrested by 2 police detectives from Leeds. A few days later, Bristol was called to a public house to deal with Kesteven, who was quite sober but brandishing a whetstone, a stone used for sharpening blades, at the people there, and dancing with his feet. Kesteven had threatened to kill the first person to enter the room, but Bristol and another man managed to take him home and eventually calm him down. Bristol related other strange episodes, such as when Kesteven claimed, with no foundation in reality, to have taken part in several cricket tours abroad and made a great deal of money from them. He also continued to be in constant fear of detectives from Leeds, although Bristol was not aware of anything which would have caused the police to be looking for him. On another occasion, he told Bristol that he would like to die like a cat, whatever that meant. Furthermore, Kesteven was unusually fascinated by murder stories in the press, and would sometimes go for days without eating solid food. Another curious incident took place around 1884 or 1885. Around midnight one Sunday, a policeman heard someone running down a street in Sutton in Ashfield shouting, "Murder!" and "Police!" It was Kesteven, who ran into the policeman and was clearly seriously disturbed, although not obviously drunk. A cursory investigation revealed nothing amiss in the area, although the policeman did not make any inquiries the following day. He concluded that Kesteven was wrong in the head and took him home. At some point around the same time, possibly connected with that incident or the earlier ones witnessed by Bristol, Kesteven was under the care of the local surgeon, being of unsound mind. The surgeon later reported that this was unconnected with alcohol or alcoholism, and considered having him admitted to a lunatic asylum. However, Kesteven recovered after 2 or 3 weeks. He later claimed to have been suffering from erysipelas, a skin infection which can cause severe discomfort and a fever. As Edmund Kesteven's cricket career came to an end, he seems to have stopped playing around 1891. He started a relationship with a woman named Sarah Shaw, who lived in Sutton in Ashfield. Sarah was the daughter of a publican who ran the Robin Hood Inn. In 1877, she had married Frederick Oldham, a tailor and brewery agent. However, for reasons that aren't clear, they separated in 1880. By 1883, Frederick had moved to America with another woman from Sutton in Ashfield, whom he married, creating a bigamous situation. This was a common issue for women at the time, as divorce was nearly impossible in Victorian society. So, around 1890, Sarah began living with Kesteven. Sarah worked as a dressmaker, but later accounts suggest she owned her home and several other properties. It's likely that her parents left her a significant amount of money. When her father died in 1874, he left over £1,000 in his will, which would be around £94,000 today. Her mother also left her over £500 when she passed away in 1890, worth about £55,000 today. This inheritance would have been shared with her two sisters, Keza and Harriet. They had a brother who tragically drowned at sea while serving in the Navy. Those who knew them said that Sarah and Kesteven lived together in Reading while he was a professional cricketer there. However, it's unclear exactly when this was. If Kesteven was in Hampstead in 1890, he could have only played in Reading during the 1891 season. The 1891 census, taken on April 5th, shows him living with Sarah Oldham, listed as her boarder, in a house on Penn Street in Sutton in Ashfield. His job was listed as a framework knitter instead of a cricketer, which might mean they moved to Reading later, as the census was conducted before the cricket season began. By the end of the 1891 season, Kesteven had definitely stopped playing cricket, though it's unclear if he chose to leave or simply couldn't find a team. He continued to live with Sarah in Sutton in Ashfield, but their relationship faced many challenges. Kesteven started drinking heavily, and when he was under the influence, he often became aggressive and unpleasant. Friends noted that he sometimes disappeared for weeks, engaging in heavy drinking. He and Sarah had frequent arguments, which sometimes turned violent. On one occasion, Kesteven even smashed a piano in her house and threatened her with a knife, claiming he would use it on her one day. He also unjustly accused her of being with other men, which caused several fights between them. Sarah's sister, Keza, encouraged her to leave Kesteven multiple times, but many, including Keza, agreed that they generally got along well and described Kesteven as attentive. During 1894, their relationship seemed to improve, and the arguments stopped. At some point, most likely in 1894, Kesteven was involved in a serious incident. He was boasting about money when a group of men attempted to rob him. During the struggle, he was stabbed, and later reports indicate he was charged with assault. But the case never went to court due to a lack of evidence. The decline of Kesteven's life reached a peak at the end of 1894. In the week leading up to Christmas, he spent more time than usual in pubs and visited a friend named Harry Else. Harry noticed that Kesteven was acting in a funny manner, even though he hadn't been drinking. During this visit, Kesteven began to boast about making a lot of money from a cricket tour in Australia. He became angry when Harry didn't believe his story, showing signs of the growing instability in his life. On Christmas Eve, Sarah Shaw spent time shopping at the market in Sutton in Ashfield with her sisters. She also picked up some food for Kesteven's dinner, choosing something she thought he would enjoy. Meanwhile, Kesteven had gone to get some medicine that had been prescribed for Sarah after he called a local doctor a few days earlier. People around town noticed that Sarah seemed a bit unwell as Christmas approached. The assistant surgeon who helped Kesteven mentioned that he found Kesteven's behaviour strange, noting how he kept rolling around in an unusual way. After finishing their shopping, Sarah's sister took her home to Penn Street before heading back to Keza's house, which was just a few doors away. Keza and her husband were hosting a friend for a Christmas Eve party, which went on until after midnight. Harriet, one of Sarah's sisters, stayed for a while, but on her way home, she stopped by Sarah's house, where she found Sarah and Kesteven having dinner together. Both appeared sober and calm. Just after midnight, as Keza's party was winding down, Sarah suddenly burst through the unlocked back door and stumbled into the front room, shocking guests. She had a deep cut in her throat and was unable to speak. She sat down in a chair but quickly collapsed to the floor and lost consciousness. She never woke up. In the chaos, Keza's husband, John Dove, rushed to Sarah's house. When he knocked on the door, Kesteven answered. Dove exclaimed. "Good God, Ted, what have you been doing?" Kesteven went with Dove back to his house and was there when Sarah died shortly afterward. He told several people, including John Dove, Harriet, who was called to the house after the alarm was raised, and a policeman, that he had inflicted the injury, and he made no attempt to deny it. He was heard saying that Sarah had deceived him and had been with 2 Keelings. While this didn't justify his actions, everyone who was interviewed agreed that there was no truth to his accusations. Most troubling for his later defense, he stated, "She deserved it, and I ought to have done it sooner." Everyone noted that he was sober, and when his friend Harry Else arrived, Kesteven told him, "Shake hands with me for the last time." Despite the panic around him, Kesteven remained calm and detached. When a police sergeant arrived, he searched Sarah's house and found blood in the bedroom along with a damaged razor that Kesteven claimed he used to inflict the wound. The bedclothes and floor were soaked in blood, but there were no signs of a struggle. An autopsy revealed that Sarah died from a combination of blood loss and asphyxia. The local doctor later mentioned that Sarah had been suffering from severe insomnia. While in jail awaiting his trial, Kesteven shared with another doctor, who came to check his mental health, that Sarah's insomnia had kept him awake for several nights. He claimed she kept getting in and out of bed, which disturbed him, and that this happened the night he killed her. The Christmas Eve tragedy received extensive coverage in the newspapers, with local reports providing many details. There was little doubt about what happened, especially since Kesteven confessed right away. When he went to trial on March 5, 1895, he pleaded not guilty but didn't seem to put up much of a defense. Some of his friends arranged for a lawyer to represent him. His defense argued that Kesteven was insane, pointing out some of his strange behaviors over the past 10 years. It was clear that while Kesteven was a heavy drinker, his odd actions occurred when he was sober. Kesteven didn't help his lawyer at all and often expressed that he would rather be hanged than spend his life in an asylum. There were also suggestions that insanity ran in his family. It was generally believed at the time that mental illness could be inherited. His maternal aunt had spent 10 years in a mental hospital before she died, and his parental uncle had died from epilepsy, which was thought to be linked to insanity. Despite his defense, the facts presented made it very difficult for the jury to declare Kesteven legally insane. They took only 10 minutes to find him guilty of murder. Before the judge delivered the sentence, he asked Kesteven if he had anything to say. Kesteven repeated that he would rather be hanged than sent to an asylum. The judge then sentenced him to death. However, just before he was taken away, Kesteven noticed Wilfred Flowers, a cricketer from Nottinghamshire, sitting in the public gallery. He called out, "Good benefit to you, Flowers." This unusual comment showed that Kesteven was not fully aware of the seriousness of the situation. During his 3 weeks at Bagthrope Jail, Kesteven received visits from his father and mother, as well as from his older brother Frederick and his wife. A few days before his execution, other family members and friends came to see him. Despite these visits, Kesteven wrote no letters and offered no insights into why he had committed the murder. The only time he seemed affected was when his nephews and nieces sent him floral arrangements. Otherwise, he remained calm and composed throughout his time in jail. On March 26, 1895, he was hanged by the executioner James Billington without saying anything further about the murder or Sarah. The murder of Sarah Oldham remained a well-known story in later years because of its shocking nature. Occurring on Christmas Eve, and Kesteven's relative fame as a cricketer, though some later sources mistakenly claim he was a famous county player. However, like the confused witnesses at the time, no one has ever been able to explain Kesteven's motives. Besides his jealousy, there seemed to be no major issues between the couple. He didn't appear to have financial troubles, especially since Sarah owned the home they lived in and likely had savings. He didn't gain anything from her murder, as he neither tried to escape nor denied what he had done. It wasn't a crime of passion fueled by alcohol, and neighbors reported no disturbances on the night of the murder, even though they had heard arguments before. The only hint of something unusual was Sarah's insomnia, which may have kept him awake the night she was killed, but this hardly seemed like a reason to commit such a brutal act. The only clues lie in Kesteven's strange behavior. Since 1883, and most notably in the weeks before the murder, which suggests that something was deeply wrong. Possibly this was connected with his alcoholism, and he exhibited signs of delirium tremens when he was in prison, but it is equally likely that the head injury he received from a cricket ball while playing in Holbeck may have affected him badly. All the incidents date from after his return from Leeds, and his fear of detectives from Leeds might be connected somehow. During the trial, this injury was not made part of the defense, and only the obituary written after his execution makes any mention of it. His counsel probably thought that he had a better case with hereditary insanity, and it would not have changed the verdict of the jury. They did not believe that Kesteven was legally insane. But that blow might give the only explanation we are ever likely to find as to why Kesteven killed Sarah. Perhaps a combination of his heavy drinking, lack of sleep, unfounded jealousy, and years of mental illness drove his actions that Christmas Eve.